Manchester City have announced that 38-year-old goalkeeper Scott Carson has signed a new one-year contract with the club that will take him to the end of the 2024-25 season. Next season will be his sixth at the Etihad, and during that time he has made a grand total of 2 appearances, having firmly been the club's third-choice goalkeeper. Initially signing on loan from EFL Championship club Derby County, the former England international has Premier League experience with Leeds United, Liverpool, Aston Villa and West Brom. Upon joining the club, many fans were confused why City would want a veteran keeper who had not played top-flight football in 8 years. Before we go on, please consider liking and subscribing for more football content. To the untrained eye, Carson playing for City is a bizarre one, but Pep Guardiola has consistently praised him for the role he plays at the club. Going on to say, the best advice I could give to the young players is to stay around Scott Carson as much as possible, in the locker room and on the pitch. It would be better than being with me. If they spend a lot of time with him, listen to him and pay attention, that is the best advice and learning they can get about their future careers. Every second he is training, and every minute you get on the pitch and in the changing room, you value. It's like the young actors have to be with the old actors on the set. They are wiser and have the values of the profession. You see the use of seasoned veteran goalkeepers as third choice, or the signings of unlikely or potentially unfavoured shot stoppers to fill spots in a squad is not wholly uncommon, but nevertheless an acquired taste to some. This brings us on to today's video, third choice keepers, the bizarre side of football. Number 1, John Lukic. Arsenal 1996 to 2001. John Lukic made just shy of 600 league appearances during a career in which he played only for both Leeds United and Arsenal on 2 occasions. His career spanned 4 decades and began in 1978 before retiring in 2001. A former title-winning keeper with both clubs, he was Leeds United's number 1 keeper during the first 4 Premier League seasons before moving back to Arsenal in the summer of 1996. Initially signed as a backup to England number 1 David Seaman, Lukic would actually play 17 times during Arsene Wenger's debut season. In 1997, the Gunners moved to sign Alex Manninger to deputise for Seaman, and this would see Lukic relegated to 3rd spot at the age of 37. Many fans pondered an imminent retirement, however he would remain with the club for the next 4 seasons. Amazingly, during the 2000-2001 season, 3 years after his last game, Lukic would make 4 further appearances due to injuries to both Seaman and Manninger. And at the age of 40, he became the oldest player to play in a UEFA Champions League game at that time. He would retire at the end of the season and later became a freelance goalkeeping coach. Number 2, Tony Coton, Manchester United 1996. There aren't many players who cross the Manchester divide, but that's what happened with Tony Coton in 1996. Initially playing for Birmingham City and Watford, he went on to join Manchester City in 1990. Coton went on to cement himself as City's number 1 over the next 5 seasons, becoming a fan's favourite in the process and playing a big part in their first 3 Premier League campaigns. That was all to change in the summer of 1995, when City moved to sign veteran German international Eike Immel. And Coton all of a sudden found himself on the bench. In January 1996, Coton was the subject of a £500,000 transfer offer from local rivals Manchester United, and all of a sudden found himself at the age of 35 having to contend with youngster Kevin Pilkington in a bid to deputise for number 1 Peter Schmeichel. Coton would only make the bench once for the Red Devils, seeing the most action when he was called upon to sing on United's FA Cup final music video. He saw the season out as a Premier League and FA Cup winner without kicking a ball, while City were relegated on the final day of the season. He was sold to Sunderland in the summer, but later returned as part of Alex Ferguson's coaching staff. Number 3, Mark Bosnich, Chelsea 2001 to 2003. Australian keeper Mark Bosnich came through the youth academy at Manchester United, but would go on to join Aston Villa in 1992. He would eventually take the number 1 spot of Villa legend Nigel Spink. In 1999, he returned to United as Peter Schmeichel's long-term replacement. However, due to injuries and form, the club had been forced into using deputy Raymond van der Houw and the new signing of Massimo Taibi. He was eventually replaced permanently by French goalkeeper Fabien Barthez, and he never played again for United. Sir Alex Ferguson would later say that Bosnich was a terrible professional, but that was after Chelsea opted to sign him as their 3rd choice keeper on a free transfer in January 2001. He found himself contending behind experienced Ed de Hoy and his deputy, Carlo Cudicini, and would eventually make 7 appearances in total, all coming in his second season. By the time he left the club, he was arguably viewed as the 5th choice keeper, now behind even Rhys Evans and Lenny Pidgley. He was eventually dismissed when he failed a drugs test and was later banned from football for 9 months. He finished his career in his home country and now works as a TV pundit. Number 4, Stuart Taylor, Manchester City 2009 to 2012. What can you say about Stuart Taylor? To sum him up, every so often you come across goalkeepers who barely kick a ball in their career, and arguably Taylor is one of them. In his 21-year career, he only made 75 league appearances. Having come through the academy at Arsenal and making 30 appearances in 8 years, he saw Premier League success but largely played understudy to a succession of keepers. He later went on to Aston Villa, where he also barely played over 3 years with the Villains. In 2009, he joined Manchester City as third-choice goalkeeper, deputising to Shay Given and Joe Hart, and later Kostel Pantilimon. He was part of the title celebrations on the field, following City's famous title win, but in his 3 seasons at City, he only saw the field in pre-season friendlies and rarely made the bench. Following his release, he had similar spells with Reading, Leeds United, and Southampton. Number 5. Andy Lonergan, Liverpool 2019 to 2020. Lonergan was a stalwart goalkeeper in the Football League. He made 208 appearances for Preston North End between 2000 and 2011, even scoring a goal, in a career that only ever reached the heights of the EFL Championship. He also played for Bolton Wanderers and Leeds United, and by 2019, he was playing for League Two side Rochdale on loan from Middlesbrough before being released. Amazingly, Lonergan would get a call he was not expecting, and it wasn't for a permanent deal with Rochdale. Premier League side Liverpool offered him the opportunity to join the club's pre-season tour in the United States due to a shortage of goalkeepers. Upon completion, the 36-year-old signed for the Reds on a permanent deal. Despite not playing in a game, he was an unused substitute in both the UEFA Super Cup and the FIFA Club World Cup. He was released at the end of the season, and now aged 40 continues as the third-choice keeper for rivals Everton. Number 6, Neville Southall, Bradford City 2000. Big Nev was an institution in the English game. The Welsh international began his career in 1973, but didn't come to prominence until 1981 when he signed for Everton. With the Toffees, he bagged a couple of First Division titles and pair of FA Cups before leaving the club in 1998, after 578 league appearances. Over the next 2 seasons, he moved around a number of several lower league teams before settling with Torquay United. At the age of 41, he made a shock return to the Premier League with Bradford City in what was coined as a player-coach deal. He effectively became the club's 4th choice keeper, but he soon found himself pulling his gloves back on for a game in the West Yorkshire derby against Leeds in March 2000. Following injuries to Aidan Davison, Gary Walsh and Matt Clark. After the game, he was criticised for being too overweight to play professional football, and the 2-1 defeat was his only appearance for Bradford and his final professional game. Southall was released by Bradford in the summer and was contracted to another 5 teams over the next 2 years. He later managed in non-league but hasn't been in a post now since leaving Margate in 2009. Number 7, Robert Green, Chelsea 2018 to 2019. Starting his career with Norwich City in the late 90s, he was eventually the long-term replacement for club legend Brian Gunn and remained with the club for 9 seasons. He was part of the Canaries Premier League season in 2004-2005. But in fairness, his career properly kicked off when he joined West Ham in 2006. Green also became a regular in the England team and was part of the squad for World Cup 2010, where he infamously spilled Clint Dempsey's shot over the line in the 1-1 draw with the USA. In total, he was capped 12 times and was also part of the Euro 2012 squad. Domestically, Green moved on to Queen's Park Rangers, and over his 4 seasons, the club yo-yoed between the Premier League and the Championship. He later played for Leeds United before being signed as backup keeper at Huddersfield in 2017. Surprisingly, in 2018, he signed for Chelsea to act as third choice behind Kepa Arrizabalaga and Willy Caballero. Green's season was completely uneventful, but who can forget him celebrating in his full kit as the club won the UEFA Europa League. The following month, he announced his retirement from football. Number 8, Lee Grant, Manchester United 2018 to 2022. Grant is fondly remembered for his 2 spells at Derby County, beginning his career with the Rams in 2002 and later playing for Sheffield Wednesday and Burnley before returning to County in 2013. In 2017, he would taste Premier League football for the first time at the age of 34, as he was signed by Stoke City due to an injury to Jack Butland. However, over the next year, he would become number 2 once Butland made a return to fitness. In 2018, he was the surprise subject of a £1.5 million bid from Giants Manchester United, in a move that came completely out of left field. Grant, who had predominantly been an EFL Championship standard keeper for his career, was now thrust into the Old Trafford limelight as deputy to David De Gea and Sergio Romero. Ironically, Romero was sent off in a League Cup game against his beloved Derby County, which teed up the most unlikely of debuts for Grant. Somewhat surprisingly, the game would end 2-2, and Grant was unable to save United in the resulting penalty shootout, with the Rams winning 8-7 at Old Trafford. He later played again against FC Astana, and remained with the club until 2022 when he retired. He is now part of Kieran McKenna's coaching staff at Ipswich Town, whilst his son True Grant is a Youth FA Cup winner with Manchester City. Number 9. Richard Wright, Manchester City, 2012 to 2016. Remember this picture earlier of Stuart Taylor and another keeper flanking David Seaman? Well, meet Richard Wright. Ironically, he was the number 2 to Seaman over Taylor at Arsenal, and would later go on to be Taylor's replacement at City a decade later. It all started at Ipswich Town for Wright in the mid-90s. By the time he joined Arsenal in 2001, Wright had already made 240 league appearances for the Tractor Boys and had a single England cap to his name. He moved to Everton as their number 1 keeper after a year with the Gunners, but was largely sidelined by injury for the next few seasons before emerging as Tim Howard's understudy. Following a brief spell with West Ham, he returned to Ipswich in 2008, becoming as much of a solid Championship keeper as he was before. In 2012, he signed for Preston North End, but bizarrely quit the club a week into pre-season citing homesickness. Oddly, everyone expected another return to Portman Road. However, following a trial at Colchester United, he surprised everyone by ending up signing a 1-year contract with Premier League champions Manchester City. He spent his entire time at the Etihad as third-choice keeper, under the likes of Joe Hart and Willie Caballero, but only ever played in the club's pre-season friendlies. In 2016, following the appointment of Pep Guardiola, Wright was not offered a new deal and opted for retirement, but did, however, take up the offer to become Guardiola's assistant goalkeeping coach, which is where he remains to this day. Number 10. Neil Sullivan, Chelsea, 2003 to 2004. Neil Sullivan was a born and bred crazy gang player. Starting his career with his local side Wimbledon, he joined the club in 1988. He was promoted from their academy shortly after their famous FA Cup triumph, and over the next few years became a solid deputy keeper to Hans Seigers. By 1996, he had usurped both Seigers and Paul Heald as the Dons' number 1, and famously was the keeper who conceded that goal from the halfway line by David Beckham. By 1998, he was part of Scotland's World Cup team in France, and in 2000, he became Tottenham's replacement for Ian Walker. Sullivan remained at Spurs for 3 seasons, but in his final season, a broken thumb led to him losing his number 1 spot to Casey Keller, of which he would never regain. In 2003, he signed for local rivals Chelsea as their 4th choice keeper, behind Carlo Cudicini, Marco Ambrosio, and Jurgen Macho, resulting in him miraculously going from Spurs number 1 to Chelsea number 4 in less than a year. Sullivan would actually make 8 appearances for the Blues whilst filling in for injuries, but following the end of the season, he would become Leeds United's first choice keeper, following their relegation to the Championship. He later played for Doncaster Rovers before retiring quite fittingly with AFC Wimbledon in 2013. He has since worked as a goalkeeping coach, most recently for Hull City. Number 11. Loris Karius, Newcastle United, 2022 to present. We get to the curious case of Loris Karius. Seen as an up-and-coming German goalkeeper, he played at every youth level internationally, from the under-16s to the under-21s. Once on the book at Manchester City, he made his name in the Bundesliga for Mainz. In 2016, he joined Liverpool, where he was touted as one of the best up-and-coming keepers in the world. He was instantly installed as the new number 1 over current first choice Simon Mignolet. However, over the next 2 seasons, both keepers would play almost an equal share of games. He started in the 2018 UEFA Champions League final and was at fault for 2 of Real Madrid's 3 goals, as they were beaten 3-1, and came in for strong criticism from the media and his own fans. In the summer, the club moved to sign Alisson as the number 1, and Karius found himself out of the teams and out on loan with Besiktas and Union Berlin, before eventually leaving Anfield in 2021. In September 2022, he signed for Newcastle United as third choice keeper still only at the age of 28. He remained firmly behind both Nick Pope and Martin Dubravka. But in February 2023, due to injury to both players, he was called upon to make his debut in the League Cup final at Wembley against Manchester United. Newcastle would lose 2-0. The game was his first in 2 years. In the summer of 2023, he signed a further one-year deal and would play in the 4-1 loss against Arsenal last season. Number 12, Alex Manninger. Liverpool 2016 to 2017. One of the most random and bizarre signings of 2016 was Liverpool's acquisition of veteran 39-year-old reserve shot stopper Alex Manninger after a 14-year hiatus from English football. The Austrian international first joined Arsenal in 1997 as number 2 to David Seaman. Winning the Premier League in his first year, he was regarded as a fairly solid backup keeper over his 5 seasons at Highbury. But being the number 2 keeper was something that became a career habit. With similar roles at the likes of Espanyol, Torino, Bologna, Red Bull Salzburg and others, before gaining more recognition as Gianluigi Buffon's number 2 at Juventus between 2008 and 2012. In 2016, he began training with Liverpool and would join the club on a 1-year contract. He was installed as number 3 keeper behind Loris Karius and Simon Mignolet. He didn't play a single minute of competitive football and only saw the field in pre-season friendlies. He retired at the end of the season and now works in real estate. Number 13, Mark Schwarzer. Chelsea 2013 to 2015. Australian keeper Mark Schwarzer first came to England in 1996 when he swapped Bundesliga side Kaiserslautern for old First Division side Bradford City. A year later he joined Middlesbrough initially, as backup to both Gary Walsh and Ben Roberts in his first season, before going on to be Borough's number 1 keeper over the next 11 seasons, with 10 of those in the Premier League. In 2008, he joined Fulham and went on to be their number 1 over the next 4 seasons. However, in 2013, ahead of Fulham's move for Dutch keeper Martin Stekelenburg, Schwarzer announced he would be leaving Craven Cottage at the age of 40. One place where few expected him to turn up was with local rivals Chelsea. He quickly found over the next 2 seasons he would be battling both Henrique Hilario and Thibaut Courtois in a bid to deputise for club legend Petr Cech. He would, however, play 12 games over the 2 seasons. And in a game against Sunderland in March 2014, he became the oldest player to represent Chelsea in a Premier League match, aged 41 years and 195 days. He was released in the summer of 2015 and spent 1 final year in the game as sub-keeper to Kasper Schmeichel at Leicester City. He now works as an occasional TV pundit. Number 14, Tom Heaton, Manchester United 2021 to present. In a career that's come full circle, Heaton graduated from United's academy in 2005 and spent 5 seasons as a professional at Old Trafford. Unfortunately, he never made a first-team appearance and spent 6 spells out on loan during this time. In 2010, he joined Cardiff City on a free transfer, and then after losing his place in the team, he was moved on to Bristol City in 2012. A year later, he was on the move again and joined Burnley, where he earned promotion to the Premier League in 2014. Heaton was predominantly the Clarets' number 1 until the introductions of Nick Pope and Joe Hart in 2017 and 2018. In 2019, he joined Aston Villa as their new number 1, but following a knee injury, would lose his place in the team to Pepe Reina. By the time he returned to fitness, he had lost his place to the brilliant Emiliano Martinez, and he was eventually released in 2021. His next move would surprise most, as he would return to United as understudy to David De Gea and Dean Henderson. What made it even more surprising is United already had veteran Lee Grant already signed up. Nevertheless, Heaton would finally make his United debut in December 2021. As of the end of the 23-24 season, he is still with the club and has so far made a total of 3 appearances. Number 15, Marcus Betinelli, Chelsea 2021 to present. Betinelli graduates from the Youth Academy at Fulham in 2010. And after a number of loan spells by 2014, he was the club's first choice keeper during their time in the Championship. In 2015, he lost his place to Andy Lonergan and later David Button. He was in and out of the team for the next 6 years, predominantly being number 2. By the time he was released, he had spent his final season on loan at Middlesbrough and looked destined to get a deal playing at Championship level. However, in 2021, he signed a 2-year contract with Chelsea initially as 3rd choice under Edward Mendy and Kepa Arrizabalaga. In January 2022, he made his debut in a 5-1 win over Chesterfield in the FA Cup. As of the 23-24 season, he continues with the club and has not played a single game since. What other obscure or bizarre goalkeeper signings have you noticed at other clubs? Put your answer in the comments. Thanks for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing for more football content.